Bitcoin should not be legal tender in El Salvador, the IMF. The International Monetary Fund said Bitcoin should not be used as legal tender in El Salvador and urged the Central American country to strengthen the regulation and supervision of its newly established payment ecosystem. In a statement published on Monday, the IMF recommends that El Salvador narrow the scope of its Bitcoin law and mentioned significant risks that Bitcoin has for consumer protection, financial integrity, and financial stability. Just quickly take a look, right? The International Monetary Fund is an international financial institution, which we all know, headquartered in Washington, D.C., consisting of 190 countries. It claims to be working to foster global monetary cooperation, secure financial stability, facilitate international trade, promote high employment and sustainable economic growth, and reduce poverty around the world. Formed in 1944, started on the 27th of December. Okay, at the Bretton Woods Conference, primarily by the ideas of Harry Dexter White and John Maynard Keynes. So, I mean, this is pretty interesting, right? That's pretty interesting that that's based off of John Maynard Keynes. Anyways, okay, let's continue, okay? Because so the IMF started in 1944, and you heard what I just read to you, right? Fostering financial stability, all this good stuff.
Who is John Maynard Keynes for, Phil, for anybody who doesn't know?
Oh, okay, so let's dive into it. John Maynard Keynes was an English economist whose ideas fundamentally changed the theory and practice of macroeconomics and economic policies of governments. This is actually, if I'm not mistaken, this is what Keynesian economics is.
Correct. Yep, and then Bitcoin comes from the Austrian school of economics. So Keynes essentially really believed in, he didn't believe in the boom and bust cycles, right? He believed that government intervention should be used to lessen the blow. But by doing that, essentially, yeah, you might lessen the blow in the short term, but eventually, you have to pay the piper, so to speak. So I think that it had I know, again, this is a science. This really isn't, and none of this is a fact. But I think it had Keynesian economics had the opposite intended effect in the long run. And I think that we are all going to learn that very quickly as the fiat system unravels. Anyways, Phil, go ahead. Sorry.
All right, no worries. All right, let's take a look. Remember that date, right, of 1944 and economic stability and all that good stuff, right? Okay, so 1962, the flash crash of 1962. July 1971, the Brazilian market crash. Okay, 1973, there was a 23-month stock market crash because of the rise in oil prices. Let's continue here. I don't know, Souk Al-Manak's stock market crash, 1982. I guess that wasn't that significant necessarily, but I'm sure it was to them. Black Monday, right? 1987. Gen Xers, were very young when that happened, but the boomers will remember that one. Okay, that was insane. Let's keep going. June 1989. Rio de Janeiro stock market crash. In the early 90s, okay? I remember this growing up because this affected me as a kid growing up. All of a sudden, businesses were closing all around us, okay? Because of what happened. We had the 90s recession, then the Japanese asset bubble in 1991, Black Wednesday in 1992. You guys remember the financial stability that the IMF was going to put in? Mm-hmm. That financial stability? Like, look at this, 1997, Asian financial crisis. The dot-com bubble of 2000. Stock market downturn of 2002, Chinese stock market bubble of 2007, the bear market in 2007, the financial crisis of 2007, 2008. Okay? Anyways, so the list, yeah.
So their argument to that would be, from the Keynesian perspective, it would be, if it wasn't for Keynesian economics and massive intervention by the Fed, aka money printing, those crashes would be significantly worse. That would be their response to that. Now, here's my response to that line of fucking argument, which is total bullshit, is you see that the Black Monday crash was 20%? My dude, 20% is nothing for Bitcoiners. We do that sleeping. We Phil, how many 80% corrections have we swallowed by now? right? So it's like their perspective, and you hear this all the time on CNBC, Jim Cramer, there's too much volatility. There's too much volatility. Bro, give me that volatility all you want, because that volatility is on the way up, right? So the way that I see that is that that's natural market discovery without any type of regulatory intervention trying to stop normal market forces. That would be my response to the Keynesian BS, which is like the volatility is going to kill people's jobs and whatever. I disagree. I think the volatility, and again, this comes from the Austrian School of Economics, and I'm completely aware of that, but I come from the school of thought, I know you do too, Phil, where that volatility and that dot-com bubble and the 2008, 2007 recession, if you let it actually take place instead of infusing money to keep these zombie companies alive, what that does is it flushes out inefficient businesses, making room for new businesses that do a better job at what these giant, too big to fail corporations are supposed to do, right? So that's the angle that they're approaching it from, which is like, there's too big to fail. Bitcoiners and people that are from the school of Austrian economics are like, there's no such thing as too big to fail. Even if something's really big, if it fails, it fails. And it failed because it wasn't managed properly, right? And then the free market is going to replace it with something that's better, right? So they failed at even the thing that they were trying to do. You know, it's like, anyways, I'm sorry, Phil, go ahead.
No worries. I know this was, trust me, as soon as I read this article, like it just, I was like, no, I'm like, I gotta just dive into this and take a look. I'm like, you kidding me? I'm like, these people promise economic stability and then you have crash after crash after crash. Like, what are you talking about?
When they mean economic stability, what they mean,
well,
right?
They mean their economic stability.
Their economic stability, because
yeah, no,
the economic stability, essentially what that means is they print money, right? That's essentially what it means. And when you print money, you create something called the Cantillon effect. The rich get richer and the poor get poor because they're at the bottom end of the money spigot. They don't have the means to save in stocks and real estate. They save in cash, right? So when they print, when the government prints, right, it's only the wealthy that have their money in assets that benefit from asset inflation, which is actually really good if you're holding on to a house. If you're holding on to stocks, it's going up 30, 40%, right? It's only the people that hold cash, which is most of society, that are hurt by this. So the IMF is full of caca. Anyways. Yeah.
So the IMF said that the announcement of a billion Bitcoin-backed bond made by President Nayib Bukele on Saturday was not discussed in joint meetings between government officials and the agency. I don't see what the hell El Salvador owed them anyways.
Could you imagine? It's like anything that has to do with money, you have to talk to us. You're a sovereign.
5 years ago, they couldn't give a shit what El Salvador was doing
because they had the control. They had the
control. They didn't speak to us.
They had the control. Now, when they don't have control, it's like, oh wait, you have to go through us. No, why do people have to go through that? El Salvador is a sovereign country. Anyways, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No worries. Although the IMF's technical analysis did not include the bond announcement, the financial institution said El Salvador's plans to buy more Bitcoin following the bond issuance, along with increasing its Bitcoin exposure, will require a very careful analysis of implications for and potential risks to financial stability. And in the back of your head, just remember the 20 crashes we just went through that I just read to you. When you think about these ridiculous, they just say words, but these words have no meanings.
Oh, by the way, and all those crashes, Phil, what isn't highlighted, but I saw an amazing article talking about this the other day, and every single one of those crashes, the rich got richer and the poor got poorer. Every single one of those crashes, because essentially, due to the thought of Keynes, right? The Fed intervenes, floods the system with cash, and the people that are saving in cash get to have to pay the bill. So it's like Main Street bails out Wall Street. Anyways.
Yeah. Okay, so regarding the country's new payment ecosystem, the IMF said El Salvador must immediately implement stronger regulation and oversight. Oh, they're so good at barking orders, huh? It added that the Chiva wallet should be required to safeguard funds in US dollars and Bitcoin by segregating and ring fencing reserve assets. Okay, ring fencing, it just means putting a fence around something. Like it's like they always try to make it sound like it's so fancy. Anyways, the banking regulation, for its part, should add prudential safeguards such as conservative capital and liquidity requirements related to Bitcoin exposure, the IMF added.
Okay. It's so crazy, dude, that it's like this institution that's not controlled by people of El Salvador is barking orders, dude. It's like they're telling them what to do. And didn't El Salvador's GDP increase by like a crazy number this year? Anyways.
So hold on, that was, I meant to highlight that and I didn't. So that was actually going to be my next point, right? Is that El Salvador's public debt could escalate beyond 95% of its GDP by 2026.
Isn't the US much higher than that?
Bingo. The United States recorded a government debt of GDP of 128% to the country's gross domestic product in 2020. So we could see the complete, utter hypocrisy, okay? When you read an article like that sits there touting all of these wonderful feel-good terms, right? The IMF is looking out for your best interest. In all those stock market crashes, the retail investor, make no mistake, ate shit, okay? They ate shit and they sold, okay? And they sold to the institutions that could buy these assets back for fraction of what they were originally paid for and then sell them at a much higher level, which they understood when the market inevitably went up. Because, as we know, the more money printing there is, the higher the market goes. And if you go take a look at a historical Dow Jones chart, you'll see that proof. The market just goes up and to the right. Always. Except when they stop with the money printing. They'll cause some dips here and there, but make no mistake, right? All those dips are reasons to create, quote unquote, more control. Like now you see there's a lot less volatility in the market. That's a good thing. Because you should never, you should never be getting wealthier too quickly. You should never have that. You should never have that volatility, but they're never going to talk to you about that. They're going to talk to you about the other side of it, how they're protecting you from poverty. That's what's happening. We're being protected, Nico.
Dude, it's the exact opposite. These people are doing the exact opposite of their mission statement. Obviously, back in the 1940s, you can give them the benefit of the doubt. Right, it's like communism back in the early 1900s, right? You didn't know whether communism was going to work, right? But after a century of learning lessons, half a century in this case, right, with the IMF and whatever, dude, I think it's just made matters worse. And I think that the
100%.
only way that they think they know how to fix problems is by throwing money at the issue. And here's the thing. Because supposedly one of the things of the IMF, one of the goals is to essentially help poverty, help people with employment. But if you actually talk to, or you see what Nayib Bukele says about the IMF, you see what Lord Fusuita of the Kingdom of Tongo said when he came on the show to talk about the IMF, none of them say good things about the IMF. They all say this is a predatory institution that takes advantage of the U.S. fiat system, right, to take advantage and give predatory loans to countries to essentially enslave them, right? We had Nayib Bukele say that in his own way, and we had Lord Fusuita say that. This is freaking bullshit, and the reason that they're having a total freaking meltdown is because there's a parallel system that provides a better solution, and there is absolutely nothing they could do about it, so they're just pounding the drums and pounding sand, hoping that they're going to scare people into compliance, but it's not going to work because Bitcoin doesn't care. Honey Badger doesn't care. But yeah, man, crazy stuff.
I just wanted to add to what you're saying. 85% of the world live on less than $30 a day. Okay? So they're not really helping poverty. I mean, are you kidding me? If this many people are still impoverished, then obviously it's not freaking working, right? It's the same, it's the same thing with, unfortunately, with certain charities, right? Where 90 cents of every dollar goes to administrative costs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, Look, I know that people want to believe that all these things work, but you got to remember it's not you, but I mean all of us need to remember it is a world of incentives, and people are incentivized for their own clan, for their own family. That's not a bug. It's the way it works. We're humans. So what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do what's right for them. And if what's right for you or me is in opposition to what is right or good for somebody else, we're still going to do it because it's good for us. That's the problem. And this is why Bitcoin fixes this. This is why it takes away this lever of control, puts it into the network, takes the value, puts it into the network. That's the fairest game we are going to get with money.